silence your phones?
Yes.
Put them on vibrate mode?
Yeah, I thought I had it, sorry.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Marie Collins. The date is July 25th, 2023. We are here to consider a zoning application for the Ortiz minor CPD. All testimony and evidence I accept during these hearings must be taken in under oath. Therefore, I will administer the oath to everyone in the room at this time. If you are going to be speaking or putting evidence into the record, please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony and evidence you enter into the record this afternoon will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, so one question, do we have any members of the public here?
Yes.
Okay, and you filled out a form? Okay, very good. All right. Then let me take a few minutes to explain the order of proceedings. We begin by having the applicant's representative present the request and explain how they feel as though it complies with the county's land development regulations. Following their presentation, which may include more than one witness, we will turn to the county planner that reviewed the application and prepared the staff report. The staff report is a public record and is available for your viewing online, or you can request a copy. After staff's presentation, I will open up the floor to members of the public. Today we only have one person. I will call your name, you will come to the podium, and you will share any concerns you have regarding the project. I find oftentimes members of the public are not completely in favor or opposed to a project, but they do have specific concerns. If you share those concerns with us, you give us an opportunity to perhaps address those concerns through conditioning. At the close of public input, I'll go back to the parties. They will make concluding remarks, and then we'll close the hearing. Since this is a request for rezoning, the final decision-making falls with me unless the applicant requests a second hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. But you must make that election before we close the record. I'm ready to begin.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Stacy Ellis Hewitt with Banks Engineering. I have previously been accepted as an expert witness in land use, planning, and zoning matters, and I'd like to request to be accepted as such today.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you. I do have the exhibits that were referenced in the 48-hour notice.
Okay, thank you. I will mark them. Your PowerPoint will be Exhibit 1. And is this an updated master concept plan?
No, it is the master concept plan in the record. It's just some full-size to scale versions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With me today, I also have Shane Johnson with Passarella and Associates regarding environmental, and Yuri Baikow with TR Transportation Consultants. The site is approximately 9.57 acres, located at the southeast corner of Ortiz Avenue, which is a county-maintained arterial, and Glenwood Avenue, which is a county-maintained local road. It's approximately a quarter mile south of Tice Street and approximately a half mile south of Palm Beach Boulevard. The applicant is Charleston Enterprises, LLC, who is also the property owner, and the request is a rezoning from residential plan development and commercial plan development to a minor residential plan development to replace 5,400 square feet of commercial and 60 townhouse or multifamily dwelling units with a maximum of 144 townhouse or multiple family dwelling units. That consists of 96 standard density and 48 bonus density units, and accessory uses with a maximum building height of 45 feet. We are in the Fort Myers Planning District, and the type of bonus density hasn't been determined yet. That will be determined at the time of development order application. The future land use of the subject property and properties to the north and south are central urban, which is the second most intense future land use category, which allows a standard density up to 10 dwelling units per acre and a maximum total density of 20 dwelling units per acre. To the west is in directly to the west is in the city of Fort Myers. And just for reference, that is in the traditional community with a standard density up to 25 dwelling units per acre and a maximum total of 35 dwelling units per acre. To the northwest and a little parcel down to the southwest is in the intensive development future land use category with a standard density up to 14 dwelling units per acre and a maximum total of 30 dwelling units per acre. To the east is public facilities and then some industrial land use categories as well. Zoning and uses, the current RPD ZPD was approved by zoning resolution Z04078. The site did receive South Florida Water Management District and DO approvals back in 2005, but it does remain vacant. We assume the economic issues stopped the development, and the low density also was a factor as far as having entitlements for these 17, 18 years now, and that's why the project has not moved forward. To the west, there is City of Fort Myers CG, commercial general zoning, which has 25 dwelling units per acre by right and allows up to 70 feet or 5 stories height and is vacant. And then to the northwest, in this area is zoned C1, and that permits multifamily and commercial uses. And the standard zoning district has a height of 35 feet, but it could be increased with the regulation that you increase your setbacks by half a foot for every foot that you go over 35 feet. So that would require 20-foot side setbacks and 30-foot rear setbacks, just for context, along with the subject request. To the north is zoned agricultural AG2 and is vacant. And to the east is industrial plan development. It's the Billy Creek Commerce Center, Phase 5. That is included, the IPD actually goes all the way down to Luckett Road. It is in attachment I, the zoning resolution, and it was approved for 425,000 square feet of industrial and 30,000 square feet of commercial uses. And it is the Lee County DOT Operations Center just to the east of this site. To the south is mobile home MH1, the Ortiz subdivision. Mobile homes and single-family homes exist on the site. The subject property did have prior agricultural cattle grazing on the site as well. And just for reference, the CPD is along the frontage, and the rest of the site is the RPD. Just some breakdown on the density. Again, the standard density is up to 10 dwelling units, and the maximum is up to 20. The maximum that could be requested on this property is 192 dwelling units, and the actual request is for 144 dwelling units. Those additional 48 that we're not requesting is allowed utilizing Greater Pine Island transfer development units. And I did just include for reference this is a map of the receiving areas for transfer development units, just to show how the county has highlighted this area for receiving different types of transfer development units, and the subject property is in the universal transfer development units receiving area, meaning that any type of dwelling unit, whether it be Southeast Lee County, wetlands, or Greater Pine Island, TDUs could be located on this site. The staff does recommend approval, and the applicant is in agreement with the staff report recommendation and the conditions and deviations as revised by the applicant's 48-hour notice. And I would like to incorporate the staff report and the 48-hour notice and attachments as part of my testimony, please. There's the staff report has the full list. I'm not going to go through each one in detail, but there is a plethora of existing public services and facilities in this area, which is also further demonstrated by being a universal TDU receiving area. There is a Lee Tran route with an existing bus stop just to the south of the site and at Dean Street. And there are, the fire is less than a mile away, EMS less than a mile away. It's just got plethora of schools, parks, existing sidewalks, and employment and shopping. There's all along Tice Street, Palm Beach, Glenwood has commercial uses, some along Ortiz, and then there's also about a mile and a half away is the Moore Shore Shopping Center up on Palm Beach for shopping and employment. This is the existing master concept plan for the site. It was issued in the development order DOS 2005-00291 and South Florida Water Management District permit number 36-05190-P were issued. It was never built, but the 60 dwelling units have been providing issues. It's just not feasible, enough density for the site. There was, just for reference, at that time, there was an enhanced buffer, a 20-foot buffer that was required as part of that zoning, and this master concept plan is carrying over that condition. This is the proposed master concept plan. The site has the same single access point that was approved with the prior zoning. However, we are also providing an emergency access secondary, which was not included in the prior request. There is an existing shared access easement along the north property line for the property to the north. We are proposing the same enhanced buffer of 20 feet along the south wherever the buildings are. And then we're also providing additional buffering pursuant to the land development code wherever drive aisles are within 125 feet of the adjacent property. We also, in the new design, have oriented the buildings perpendicular to the south so that the sides of the buildings are abutting the adjacent uses to try to assist with that, also assist with the compatibility. And we requested 20 feet setbacks consistent with the prior approval. And then we're gonna, for the townhomes, and then we were going to add 5 feet for the increased 10 feet for the multifamily, which would have been 25 feet. And staff has recommended a 30-foot setback for the 45 feet, and the applicant is in agreement with that.
And is that reflected on the,
It is in the property development regulations. They have a 25-foot perimeter setback with reference to the increasing 1 foot, or
these numbers have to change?
no, they are, I'm just referencing that they're all, the conditions are written, I'm just explaining the contrast of the existing conditions to the current conditions.
Okay.
So for us to go up to the 45 feet in height, we're in agreement with staff that will provide the 30-foot setback. And we also, as far as, there is the southwest corner of the property is within a floodway, but we will not be putting any plantings or fill in that floodway. And it will also be, there's also a note on the master concept plan that we will provide a planted littoral shelf in the lake for water quality purposes.
What's the floodway again?
Just this small sliver right here.
I see. The hash line?
This line right here.
All right, and that falls within your buffer?
It is, and if you'll see, the buffers kind of follow it so that we keep the half of the planting, the minimum half of the required buffer planting strip outside of the floodway.
And what is that, flowing down to Billy's Creek?
I believe so, yes. And when we have the aerial up, maybe we can turn that layer on for reference.
Okay. So it's not in a coastal high hazard area?
It is not in a coastal high hazard. Yeah, coastal high hazard area would not allow any of the bonus units,
right.
but, okay, this is just the conditions of approval. The increased height is appropriate at this location. The Land Development Code, Section 34-2175B1 for central urban allows up to 135 feet. And again, to the northwest allows up to 45 feet with the same setbacks proposed for the case. And to the west in the city allows 70 feet and 5 stories.
But in this case, we're capping height
40.
at 45.
Correct. and that would be only for the multifamily use. There are 6 deviations associated with the request. Deviation 1 is from Land Development Code Section 10-329D1A3, which requires excavations to be set back 50 feet from private property to allow 20 foot from private property. This is an existing approved deviation in the current zoning resolution, and we're carrying that forward as a new deviation. Staff is recommending a 8-foot fence around the lake for safety purposes, and the applicant is in agreement with that. And staff does recommend approval, and it does also meet the administrative deviation criteria in the Land Development Code. Deviation 2 is from Land Development Code Section 10-296K, which requires dead-end streets to be designed with a cul-de-sac to allow no cul-de-sac at the end of the privately maintained access way. Just for reference, let me go back to the master concept plan. This applies to the end of the access easement, the shared access easement, and also at the end where the trash collection is located. And the parking lots do provide the circulation. Staff recommends approval, and Tice Fire and Rescue District submitted with their letter attached to the staff report no objection for this deviation, and it also meets the administrative deviation criteria in the Land Development Code. Deviation 3 is from Land Development Code Section 34-935E4, which requires a minimum building separation of 1/2 the sum of the building heights, or 20 feet, to allow a building separation of 20 feet. Again, this is an existing approved deviation in the current zoning resolution, and this we've coordinated with the fire department on the staff or on the site plan, and it does provide adequate fire safety, and staff does recommend approval. Deviation 4 is from Land Development Code Section 10-291-3, which requires residential development more than 5 acres to provide more than one means of ingress or egress. And the current master concept plan had the single access point, but this code has been amended since that plan development. We have added the additional safety access to provide further justification for this deviation. The shared access is aligned with Glenwood, plus the additional emergency access. The fire department, public safety, and the Lee County Sheriff have submitted letters attached to the staff report with no objection to this deviation, and staff does recommend approval with the 3 conditions included in the staff report, and the applicant is in agreement with those conditions. Deviation 5 is from Land Development Code Section 10-285A, which requires a connection separation on principal arterials in future urban areas of 440 feet to allow the connection separations for the proposed emergency only stabilized access of 245 feet from the full access and 190 feet from Dean Street. Again, this is the site only has 325 feet of frontage, which wouldn't allow for the connection separation to be provided. And this has been worked with staff and included with the review with the agencies. They did review the master concept plan and had no objection. And staff recommends approval, and it meets the administrative deviation criteria in the Land Development Code. Deviation 6 is from Land Development Code Section 10-261A, for the size of the garbage collection areas. Again, a compactor is proposed, and the square foot for recycled materials is proposed at 144 square foot minimum. And the calculations provided in the staff report attachments demonstrate that the 12 by 12 dumpster provides adequate collection space for the amount of dwelling units. Staff does recommend approval, and it meets the administrative deviation criteria in the land development.
Okay, I have an issue with this deviation.
Okay.
In my role as hearing examiner, I can tell you I have many code enforcement cases where the dumpster areas are not maintained for multifamily projects like this. And I don't know how many of them receive deviations of this nature, but I will tell you that it's a recurrent problem, and I am not comfortable issuing a deviation for this. And if it's available to you at the DO stage, I would be more comfortable if you sought it at that stage, because it's not, I can't make a finding myself that it's not a detriment to public health, safety, and welfare based on the frequency in which I deal with multifamily complexes having their trash area with trash overspilling and other items in the area that's set aside for trash, which is clearly inadequate to support the project. So this project might be unique in some way. I'm going to leave that to development services to make that call.
Okay, all right. I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that information with us. We have worked with development services, and they do recommend approval as part of the deviation request, but I do understand and appreciate
Just
your comments.
let it be done during the development order stage. If it's available for administrative deviation, I would prefer if you went that route.
Okay, thank you. All of the 6 requested deviations do enhance the achievements of the objectives of the plan development and protect the public health, safety, and welfare. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Shane Johnson with Passarella and Associates.
Good afternoon, Shane Johnson, Passarella and Associates, and I too respectfully request to be accepted as an expert in environmental issues. Excuse me. So today I really just want to very briefly outline the environmental aspects of this project. It's not complicated whatsoever. So with respect to the mapping on the project, the flux map, we've characterized this project as entirely as disturbed land. That's primarily because of what Ms. Hewitt had stated. The land had been previously used for cattle grazing, and that is evident by the fencing that surrounds the project on all 4 sides, and also the presence of abundant pasture grasses in the ground cover. So we characterize it as disturbed land. However, there are scattered native trees on the property, and those trees may be relocated to the proposed open space areas in accordance with the LDC. The project site is entirely uplands. There is no wetlands within the project site, and that is consistent with the findings of the South Florida Water Management District permit number 36-01590-P. And with respect to listed species, Passarella and Associates conducted the protected species survey on the property in September 2022, and there were no Lee County protected species observed on the property at that time, nor were there any state or federal listed species observed within the project limits. And that survey is consistent with Lee Plan Policy 123.4.3, which basically outlines the inventory of habitat for listed species. So in closing, the project meets the environmental goals and objectives of the Lee Plan and Land Development Code, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as necessary.
So you say there's no wetlands on site, so this floodway that you referred to, is this just like a paper floodway?
Yes, that's
Overlay.
my understanding.
There's no like clear channel that's evident? I mean, the aerial doesn't really reflect anything. I'm just
No.
curious.
And it actually goes, it's on the corner of our site, but through those residences to the south.
Okay, so no wetlands, all uplands, mostly disturbed lands, and the native trees that are present, to the extent it's possible to relocate them to the perimeter buffer, the developer will attempt to do so. Otherwise, they'll have to bring in trees to meet those requirements.
Yes, in accordance with the LDC requirements.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. For the record, Yuri Baika with TR Transportation Consultants. I've been sworn in and previously accepted as an expert in transportation planning. So I'll do just a brief presentation, we prepared a traffic study per our 144 multifamily dwelling units. As part of our traffic study, we prepared a trip generation analysis consistent with the latest IT trip generation manual. We then took those trips and added them to surrounding roadway network and conducted a future link level service analysis, or in other words, capacity analysis. In this case, we conducted a link level service analysis on Ortiz Avenue, and the results indicate that road will operate with sufficient capacity or an acceptable level of service D in the future project traffic conditions. And again, a more detailed traffic study will be conducted at the time we go through the development order process with the county. And as stated in the staff report, the staff agrees the project will not have a detrimental impact on the surrounding roadway system, and this project is consistent with the transportation element and the land development code. And that pretty much.
How does the trip generation under this model compare with the previous approval of 60 dwelling units and what was it?
It was
Under
5,400.
6,000?
Yeah, it had 5,400 square feet of general retail. And in terms of when you compare PM peak hour trips, it's the same. It's virtually the same. If you could look at table 4 of page 5 of our traffic study, we did a brief comparison. It's in the main body report on page
And
5.
so you're saying the AM peak hours where the difference is noted?
Yes, in the AM it's slightly increased, but again, for comparison purposes, we assume general retail. I mean, we don't know what the end user would have been on that commercial
Exactly,
side. So
right.
it could have been higher, it could have been lower. So yes, but generally the trip duration is pretty much the same.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And about that 6 deviation, what would have been required under code versus what they're asking for, square foot by square foot total?
Yeah, if I could just jump in and provide a little bit of explanation, because it may end up being that maybe we need to rehash the deviation itself a little bit. They're not actually seeking relief from the requirements for solid waste. They're seeking relief from the requirements for recyclables. There's already baked into the code 10261D allows for compactors, and the only standard for compactors is providing sufficient space for the compactor and receiver, in addition to the space required for recyclable collection.
So
There's no real number to that. They would provide that time of development order. What they're seeking relief from is that same space requirement for the non-compacted recyclables to reduce that area. I don't know if that changes the temperature on where you're at with the whole thing, but
are you saying there's a way to reword that deviation to make it more clear exactly what they're asking for? Because I would be willing to look at it again, because the bar is very low for deviations, but I can't ignore my experience with this issue. So
correct. Yeah, we probably could change it to, and we might just need a day or two to correct it, because it just speaks to the recyclable here. But if we spoke to say to provide the required compactor space per LDC 10261D while providing a reduced recyclable collection area, and so specifically say we're not providing relief by deviation for the solid waste portion, but more for the recyclable.
And why is it that the recyclable portion should be reduced? What benefit is that to the project?
My assumption is space constraints. The applicant may want to add to that.
That's been,
Yeah, I'm not going to support that. I can't. Ask for it at the DO stage. I mean, you'll probably get it, but
right, and it has been, there's an area requirement in the code instead of volume, so it's been kind of that's been the experience that I've been noticing on our side, is the calculations are not based on volume, which trash is generally calculated. So it may be that's the issue, is just the calculations in the code aren't specific to the volume of trash, and when the studies that are in the justification that we've looked into demonstrate smaller amounts of area needed, and it's to provide additional open space instead of having large concrete areas that aren't needed.
Yeah, but what happens, what I'm seeing is I'm seeing trash and debris outside the dumpster area, okay? Whether it's recyclable, because there's insufficient recyclable provided, or actual trash. I mean, to the point where it's ongoing, to the point where after several months of warning, I'm still having a hearing on it. So I think that section of the code really needs to be examined more closely, and whether a deviation at all should be permitted, even maybe examined more closely based on the track record that we're seeing with these multifamily projects.
Understood.
But development order, I'm not foreclosing your opportunity entirely. You have that other avenue to seek.
Okay. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Anything further?
Yes, I just wanted to go through the required findings and comp plan consistency. The request does meet the minimum requirements for bonus density found in Land Development Code Section 2-146B, as it does provide direct access onto an arterial road. There are adequate public facilities existing per the staff report and attachments. It's not located within a coastal high hazard area, and it is compatible with the existing residential industrial uses and the planned uses in the area. And we are providing appropriate enhanced setback and buffer to the south. It is consistent with the Lee Plan, Policy 1.1.3, the central urban. It's consistent with the allowable land uses and density range. It's consistent with Objective 2.1, Policies 2.1.1, on development location, as this is infill. It's compact and contiguous development in a future urban area where increased densities and bonus densities are promoted. It's consistent with Objective 2.2, Policy 2.2.1. Again, adequate public facilities exist. It's consistent with standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2. The Lee County Utilities Letter of Availability is attached to the staff report. It's consistent with policies 5.1.2 and 61.3.3, as no significant physical constraints and no fill or planting in the small portion of floodway on site, and we will comply with the Land Development Code. It's consistent with policy 5.1.3. High-density residential is encouraged near employment, shopping centers, schools, parks, transit, and bicycle facilities. And it's rare that we see a case that's meets all of those, and this site does provide all of those opportunities. It's consistent with policy 5.1.5, as we are protecting the existing residential, and it's consistent with policy 125.1.2, as we must demonstrate compliance with the Land Development Code and obtain a South Florida Water Management District permit, and it will not degrade surface and groundwater quality. It's also consistent with policy 135.1.9, and it furthers the Lee Plan directives to diversify housing opportunities in this area. It also complies with the findings for zoning matters in Land Development Code Section 34-145 D4A1. It's outlined in the staff report and attachments, so I will not go through them and belabor it, but it does comply with those findings. And that concludes my presentation, unless you have any questions.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
The applicant's narrative was very comprehensive. I've done a site check already to this property. I agree that it's appropriate for this type of use, given the proximity of transit and potentially multi-use paths. I know right now it just looked like it was a sidewalk, but are the Ortiz improvements going to extend this far to the north? No. Okay. And there's still a lot of vacant land around there, and I think it's realistic to expect that it will develop with patterns similar to this one, just judging from, what seems logical given its proximity to transit. Thank you. This is Staff Exhibit 2. The report was Staff Exhibit 1. The PowerPoint is 2.
Good afternoon, Dirk Danley, Lee County Zoning. I've been previously accepted as an expert witness in the Lee Plan Land Development Code. I'd like to do so again today. Just before we even get started, just a reaction to the 48-hour letter. Staff is in agreement with the changes that were requested by the applicant. We were able to provide some clarity to some of the conditions through those changes, and we're in support of that. As the applicant's already stated, and I won't try to belabor the points that have already been spoken on, but this is a request to go from RPD CPD to RPD to allow for a maximum of 144 units, 48 of which are sought to be bonus density with a maximum building height of 45 feet. And the applicant already went through this, but there's no development to the north. It's zoned ag. There are predominantly single family to the south and mobile homes. The city of Fort Myers is located here and then back into Lee County over here. And then this is Billy's Creek just to the east. It's an industrial subdivision.
And this blue shaded line that comes over here, what is that?
This is just waterway. This is a creek.
And that's a creek too?
Yep, and it runs all the way up.
All right, so this land that's across the street to the west, I'm assuming, is City of Fort Myers, and they can do 35 units per acre there under the city code?
I believe City of Fort Myers runs here, and then it's back into Lee County, but yes, they have a significantly higher
And
density.
heights of 70 feet?
Yes,
Okay.
right. This is a master concept plan prepared by the applicant. It does show these multifamily buildings or potentially townhouse buildings running north-south with the undulating buffer from 30 foot to 20 foot, 30 foot to 20 foot, depending on whether or not you're adjacent to a parking area or you're adjacent to a building. And that's part of the reason why we used or why we proposed an additional setback because they're already meeting the 30 feet with the building footprints that they have here today because of those buffers. There is some history on the property with the previous zoning resolution that was never developed on site. And going back to the 48-hour letter, the applicant did bring up that it's not limited to Pine Island TDUs that they could seek as part of this plan development. But they can seek up to 15 units an acre, which is what they're doing today. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what was your thought on the master concept plan not providing an amenity area for that many units, especially given the school board's protection of, school-aged children that would live there?
It's an interesting question, but I think part of it is at the election of providing additional open space areas, or these areas that are basically unencumbered. I've personally lived in apartment complexes that didn't have amenities and had this additional space in between buildings. It didn't seem uncharacteristic of a standard multifamily development.
If I may add to, the schedule of uses does allow for amenities. They're not depicted on the plan, but I don't believe it's precluded from being included in one of the buildings. If so, we're not to the development order stage, but I believe that
Yeah, because there's no outdoor playground area or any kind of, area set aside for and I would typically see that in a multifamily project. Other ones that I have seen have included things like that, so.
We're not at development order stage, and private recreation facilities, all those uses are in the schedule of uses. They're just not depicted on the site yet because we're just not at development order stage yet, but they are allowed on the site and included in the schedule of uses that were reviewed and recommended.
And the master concept plan does provide itself as just a concept, and with the two uses that they're proposing, there may end up being a change to the master concept plan overall when it comes in for development order with their end user.
Okay.
If I may, I'm sorry. The land use allows up to 20 dwelling units per acre,
Right.
and
so
we're requesting 15.
Yeah, so there's two different levels of bonus density, 15 units per acre with standard bonus density. And once you're able to provide, I believe that's either through TDU or a site-built affordable housing or cash contribution, as the applicant stated in their 48-hour letter. The last 5 units an acre would be through Pine Island TDU. So the applicant technically could have access to that if they were seeking it, but they're not. They're seeking the 15 units an acre.
Thank you.
Staff is in agreement with what the hearing examiner put on the record already, that there is sufficient infrastructure in this area. It's an interesting area because it's kind of old growth compared to a lot of areas throughout the county, but it is designated as an urban future land use category. There are urban services nearby, and staff does find that this request does meet the objectives of 2.1 and 2.2. And the applicant did speak to residential hazards. This is actually in the coast, or sorry, there is a piece of the floodway in that northwest corner that the applicant stated. But aside from that, there's no real standard hazards that the
Southwest corner.
southwest corner. That there's no hazards that the staff would find to be a concern over providing additional bonus density in the area. In terms of policy 5.1.5, we did work pretty extensively with the applicant to ensure that that line on the southern end that immediately abuts the property provides for some compatibility in the area, despite having additional height and additional density.
So no buffers required adjacent to the ag land, and I see that's where they elected to place their solid waste facility. So is the code going to require them to have some kind of shielding around that?
Yes, yeah, the area for solid waste does require a wall to be fully enclosed either by fence or concrete.
Because that will very likely develop as residential as well, probably a high-density residential use there, given central urban.
Yeah, without seeing a project in front, that would be my
Right.
suspicion as well.
Okay, thank you.
And just to note, they have a reference to a project wall in the northern boundary. Residential project walls still have a buffer requirement of it's either 7 or 7.5 feet of landscaping that would be on the outside of the wall as well. So if that is planted, or if that is installed, they would be providing additional buffer by default. Staff does find that this meets the intent of Goal 135 in terms of expanding the mix of houses throughout Lee County. As I've stated, this is an area that's been developed for quite some time, and there isn't a lot of this type of housing type in the area. And policy 135.1.9 does seek to provide a mix in areas throughout the county. And then just speaking to not degrading surface water and groundwater quality. The applicant did provide a surface water management plan. It's not in the staff report, but it is in the application file. And staff does find that they will meet the intent at the time of development order of this policy as well.
All right, thank you.
Without the rest of it's just deviations. We've already spoken on. We're in agreement. With that, we're here with any
Right.
other
It
questions.
seems like some of the deviations were approved as part of the prior plan, and they're applicable here.
Yes.
And the other ones are ones I've seen before, usually granted. So the only one that we are at an impasse on is the solid waste thing, which you can pursue later. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't have any questions right now. I'm going to open the floor to the public and invite Mr. Stoner to come speak. Thank you for coming, sir. Please state your full name for the record.
Robert Stoner. I live out here in, I didn't get a letter because I'm 50 feet past the line of notification.
Well, I'm glad you heard about the hearing then.
Yeah, well, I was also here 20 years ago. Whenever this, the original zoning request was brought forward, I live on this, whoops.
Okay.
Can you put that map back up?
Yeah, I The red dot.
red dot here. Property I have is this 5 acres right here.
Oh, I see. Yes.
I've only lived there 62 years, so I can tell you some of the things that have been brought up aren't quite true, but I can tell you a lot of history here. I also recently purchased this 2-point-something acres over here.
All right, so is that a single-family dwelling there that I see on Glenwood Avenue?
Well,
Your 5-acre piece, what is that structure?
Okay, there's actually 3 houses on this property.
Okay,
That's the house that was originally built in 1961. My parents bought this property in 1955. There's another little house in back here, and I moved there after I got out of the service. And then my mom deeded me an acre because this is zone ag, and I built a house here. After she passed away in 2015, I put it all back together.
okay.
So, going back to the original zoning in December 2004, with the 89 duplex units that was reduced down to 60. There's a lot of things that still apply here. Traffic and density. The big issue back then was density, that it didn't fit in with the neighborhood. These are all mostly single-family homes. There are actually some single-family homes being built. If you go down further down Glenwood, there's a couple being built back there. And a lot of the things that were brought up before in that previous request on density, they all still apply. Nothing's changed in the last 20 years except the type of people that are here and all.
So is it your concern that the proposed density is too intense?
Yeah, it's still too intense. You talked about the access point here.
Yeah, the project access point.
Yeah.
Going to
Well, since I've been retired, I've been retired about 7 years now. If I need to go, it's hard to make a left-hand turn on Ortiz if I decide to go that way at certain parts of the day. I mean,
heading north on Ortiz.
Yes, yeah, they head north. I actually go down Figueroa to the light at Tice Street to make a left-hand turn.
How do you do that? Oh,
Yeah, right there.
I see.
Yeah. Then also you talked about the water. When they put all this in here, where's all their runoff going to go? This is actually Billy's Creek. This is the headwaters of Billy's Creek up here. During Irma and other times, this whole corner floods right in here. I've seen that house after Irma. That house was partially flooded, so it does flood. This is a drainage easement that kind of starts at Tice Street and Ortiz, and it flows through here, flows along my property here, comes through here, goes through part of his property, and then comes back, and then flows into Billy's Creek here. The county has access to that, and they keep it cleaned out. They had a lot of debris after Ann. It was pretty well blocked up, and I lost some oak trees, and it was blocking their access until I got the oak trees out and get the power line back up, and so I've had a lot of damage out there. But that waterway flows from up there at Ortiz down through and into Billy's Creek. After I've bought that property, and even before that, unfortunately, not all the time. I have to wait till dry season usually, but you'd be surprised how much trash I pick up out of that ditch, because it all comes off the roadway up around Tice Street and then flows through there. So sometimes I actually pick up a lot of trash in this neighborhood. I get out there occasionally and I pick up basically,
Talking about this conduit here on the left side of the drawing?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So trash is coming down,
Down.
floating down.
It flows down and goes into Billy's Creek. And I said, this access here, that's going to become an issue. And it's my understanding, unless something has changed, all this along here was what is mostly county property that was bought for the original widening of Ortiz. Back whenever they were going to 6-lane Ortiz at one point. So if you go down on the west side of Ortiz, you'll notice there's not a lot of development there because that's mostly county property that they bought for 6-laning Ortiz, because they bought that side because all the power is on the east side of Ortiz. So it's going to create some issues. And I said, you know, I can't imagine these people, what you got, maybe 30 homes there, and now they're going to have almost possibly 200 homes behind them. I mean, I feel bad for those people, especially with the water. I mean, I don't know where that water is going to go. You know, they're going to have surface area.
Well, we're going to have somebody explain that in more detail.
So, I mean, you know, those are issues that need to be looked at.
Right?
Like I said, I lived there, you know, going on 62 years. I don't plan on moving. I mean, you know, the neighborhood has changed. It's mostly Hispanic now. The sidewalk gets used a lot. The one on Ortiz and the one on Glenwood. And some days it's busier. Weekends are busier because of the along Ortiz because of the flea markets and stuff. And then you know, 5 o'clock, you know, the morning traffic, because there's a lot of traffic that comes from down this way, that they all come up here to go to work and turning, you know, onto Ortiz. But you know, a lot of times in the evenings, everybody's coming north on Ortiz, and I can't get across, so I have to go up to the light if I want to go up towards Palm Beach. I just ask that staff, you know, take some time and go back over some of the previous issues that were brought up. A lot of these people have moved and stuff, and or you know, aren't in the neighborhood. And I unfortunately had just noticed the zoning sign a couple of days ago, because I don't go south that much anymore. I try and avoid Colonial and all that down there as much as possible anymore since I'm retired, because I found that Tice is nice. Everything I need is out there, and I just ask that you try and keep Tice nice. It is starting to get some single-family people building, and it'd be great if we could have single-family homes out there. It would make Tice a nice community. I've been there a long time. I care about it, and that's what I ask.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you for coming.
Keep Tice nice.
I am back to the parties for any concluding remarks you'd like to make.
And Stacy Hewitt, for the record, I do have the, if it would help, Madam Hearing Examiner, I do have maps and the codes from the city of Fort Myers for what's across the street, if you would like that submitted into the record just for reference, of
I
course.
appreciate that.
And I also, after I speak on it, I have the surface water management plan narrative, if you wish to have a copy of that, what was submitted with the application.
I have it as an attachment to the staff report.
No, it was not included because it's not a requirement for
And I will
minor.
accept it as an exhibit after you've made your remarks.
Okay, thank you. Of course, as previously stated, the site did previously receive South Florida Water Management District and Development Order approval, and it'll be required at the time of development order to receive those permits and demonstrate compliance. They'll be required to preserve the existing drainage patterns and not block any runoff overflow from adjacent properties. The drainage system within the development will be collected by vegetated dry detention swales and/or pipes, and will be treated by dry detention areas or wet detention before discharging. The prior discharge was to the east into Billy's Creek. There's a drainage easement along the east property line, and have not started those permitting efforts now for the site, but it'll either discharge into the Billy's Creek drainage easement to the east or the Ortiz right-of-way, and that'll be demonstrated at the time of South Florida and development order permitting. The site will, it is not allowed to worsen the drainage. They will ensure that at the time of those development permits. Let me see, and I would like to submit that into the record.
Thank you.
And as,
Applicant Exhibit 3 was the city zoning regs
Okay.
or classifications for the property across the street. And applicant Exhibit 4 is the surface water management plan.
Thank you.
Plan. Okay, thank you.
And in regards to the density, I just want to mention again that this is in the second most intense future land use category. We are not requesting the maximum that could be requested for the site. We're requesting 5 dwelling units per acre less than that. The adjacent property to the south, the single family, just for reference, was approximately, I believe, about 2.5 dwelling units per acre. And the minimum recommended, it's not mandatory, but in central urban, the minimum density is 4 dwelling units per acre, which it's not mandatory but recommended to promote compact development. And as we've demonstrated through the plethora of existing public services and the fact that this is a universal receiving area for transfer development units, that this is where higher densities are are encouraged and desired to prevent further urban sprawl of lower densities where public facilities do exist. There is a plethora of single-family area developments and lots in the area, and the LEAP plan does promote a diversity of that, and we believe that multifamily does need, at higher densities, should be placed in this area. And I appreciate the comments of the transportation. I'm not sure if Yuri, if you'd like to add anything further on that, but as mentioned by the public, that there is alternate routes that do accommodate and provide further further access points and routes to add to the Ortiz
Now,
option.
my understanding was at one time the Ortiz widening going to go all the way to Palm Beach, and then that was later dialed back, or?
I'll let Yuri speak on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy.
At this time, the only plans I see on a capital improvement plan is the widening to 4 lanes or Ortiz Avenue from Colonial to Luckett Road, which is just to the south of this. But this section of roadway is not yet to be funded.
I see.
So I'm not sure that if that's going to change in the future or not, but yeah, it's not been funded yet.
So it's not on the 5-year CIP?
It's not.
And do they still publish the 6 to 10 year?
They published a long-range transportation plan as part of that MPO. I'm not aware of 5 to 10 plan.
Yeah, I'll look at the map, at the LEAP plan map, and see
Okay.
what it says for financially feasible roadway improvements.
Right.
One of the 3 maps has that.
And another concern that I heard from the public was about the Glenwood Avenue and Ortiz Avenue intersection. And we weren't required to analyze the intersection because of the number of trips we're anticipated to generate. So per Lee County traffic study guidelines for rezoning applications, we weren't required to look at that intersection. So I can't speak.
So perhaps when the property to the north comes in for zoning or development approvals, they're going to be sharing an access with this project. They may be required to do that type of analysis as
Right.
part of their zoning application.
Right. If they're adding trips to that shared access, most likely, yes.
Thank you.
Can I kind of clarify that?
No, the public has that one opportunity.
Okay.
Staff, is there anything additional?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming. I appreciate everyone's input. I felt well prepared for this hearing. As I said, I've been out to the site already. I will go back after hearing the remarks of the public, and I will take a closer look at everything based on what I heard today. I was going to leave the record open for you to provide additional information regarding area set aside compared to what's required by code versus what they're asking. I still offer that to you if you want to provide it. I will review it. We can leave the record open 1 week, or if you don't think you need a week, we can leave it open to end of business on Friday, and you can supplement the record with little additional explanations since I am the final decision maker.
Is that,
In this case, the board would be the final decision maker. It's a full plan development rezoning.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we can just close the record then.
okay. Yeah, I think the staff report has the calculations, it has,
I'll take a closer look at that.
so, okay. And I believe the language is in the deviation currently, and the
Right.
condition is specific.
Well, I explained what my concerns were, so.
Yes. So, thank you,
All right, thank you everyone again for coming.
thank you.